All right, hey everyone. I've got my Photoshop brain reset, so I just wanted to do a quick demo of how to do round images in Photoshop. What I'm going to do here is actually create a template, something that I can use going forward beyond just this project. So um, to do a circle, we want to start off with a square canvas in Photoshop. I'm going to start off with 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. Um, in the web world, pixels are the only thing we have to worry about, so I would suggest switching your units of measure here over to pixels just to make everything easier, as the web doesn't care about inches and centimeters and all that stuff. So 1,000 by 1,000, I'm going to create that, and I'm going to double click on my background layer here just to turn it into an actual layer. And what I want to do is go to my shape tool and just draw a random circle. It doesn't have to be perfect here. What I'm going to do is actually make this, I want it to be the exact same size as my canvas. So in the Properties tab over here, I'm making it 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, and then I want it to be centered on the canvas, so I'm just changing the X and Y values to 0. I'm going to change the border color just to make it a little bit easier to see, hopefully. So that is now red. So I have my shape. It's a perfect circle. The benefit of using this shape tool over, say, something like the magic wand tool is the circle will be pretty much perfect. You won't have the jagged pixelated edges that the magic wand tool can often create. So I have that ellipse. You can see it there on my canvas. So I want to bring in the image that I want to crop. So I've got this image from Unsplash. So I'm just selecting all, copying, and then I'm just going to paste this on top of that bottom layer. So I got to do a little bit of work here to scale this image down and get it exactly the right size and positioned here on my canvas. So I think that looks good for what I'm doing. So I'm going to hit enter and lock that in. So now I have my image layer and I've got that ellipse. And what I'm going to do is actually click on that ellipse layer and then click over to my paths here. I have to make sure I have this selection tool selected. But what I can do is right click on this path layer and use the make selection option here. And that's going to create a perfectly round selection. Going back to my regular layers, I'm just going to hide that ellipse shape. I'm going to delete this layer that I don't need. And then with the selection tool active, I'm going to click on the little apply mask icon down here at the bottom. And so that creates a mask on that layer, creates a perfectly smooth edge around the entire image. The image is square, and from here I can export this to the web. So use the export as tool, saving it as a PNG. That's generally, when dealing with photographs, that's the best file extension. Gonna hit export, and I'm gonna save this as my round image PNG. And just to show what that looks like in the browser, I've got, actually this should be round image, hit refresh, and you can see it's working exactly how we want. We've got the transparent background showing through, and everything is good. So I did that version in Photoshop, but I want to show you a much easier method, and that's how we can do that with a single line of CSS. So Before I start that, however, I mentioned that this can be a template going forward. So I would save this file out and just kind of keep it in your back pocket, because you can go right back in. You can bring new images in, new layers, do the same thing, make selection, um, and do that multiple times over. So you don't have to draw the circle over and over again if you keep that saved somewhere. All right, so looking at the CSS option, I'm just going to delete all that. I'm going to delete this layer mask, and I'm just going to save this out as a plain old square image. So I got that saved. I'm going to change this to square image. Let's look at the browser. All right, so I've got my image. It's square. And so I've got just a little bit of CSS set up already. You've got the light blue color. I'm telling this image to be centered with 200 pixels margin on the top and bottom, so it's centering it on the page. So there's a CSS property called border radius, and this controls basically the roundness of the borders on that image. And so I'm going to start with 5%, and you can get a picture of what's happening here. So border radius of 5%, I've got a little bit of a kind of rounded look here at each corner. But if I want to go full-fledged, make it a full circle, I can do a border radius of 100%, and I get my full circle. So with one line of CSS, we can eliminate the amount of time we spent in Photoshop taking all those steps to get the exact same result. Hopefully this is helpful.